talk's just basically going to cover some approaches to app development in the Power Apps platform, when we should be doing things, where we can be doing things, and how we can, create better experiences for our users. Cool. Just a quick note, about me. I work as a tech lead at Day.com here in the Wellington offices. Got a great bunch of people around there. I am a returning adult student because, like a lot of other people in tech, I was a tech dropout. I was actually quite enjoyed Michelle's talk this morning as well, because I also took like a weird route through sales and a whole bunch of things to eventually end up in tech quite late in my career, and well, fortuitously so. And then just privately, I play guitar and I build furniture to kind of just relax. And you can reach me at LinkedIn if you ever want to get in contact. Cool. So this talk as a whole is just going to cover a couple of things. So this is just a helpful note on what's coming up. So goals of enterprise app design, what some of the current challenges and limitations are with those, what the Power Platform or Power Apps specifically will give us on that thing, some tools that you can use to craft these applications, and then hopefully a demo if there's time. All right, so I think there are many goals to this enterprise app design, and I think we've covered a lot on what the data side and the governance and security and those are. But I don't think we often talk about what the user side of this equation is. So how do we simplify applications? So how do we improve internal communication? So how do we surface up the data in the channels where people work? So this could be by SharePoint, Teams, Power Platform, modal pop-ups on our the apps. We obviously want to reduce errors. So app design can help us with that if we design apps properly. Do some user experience research and see like the common types of mistakes that people make, why they make them, and how we can prevent them from making mistakes. Often this is because we design apps that actually go quite deep into a context and people have started forgetting context. So all people working on apps have got things like in-memory context that they can remember. So you've got a working memory set. And sometimes, especially, I think if we don't think about it too much, like you go 6 or 7 levels deep with regards to table design and stuff, that users start working on something, but they've completely forgotten the context that they're working on in the beginning. So we'll have a look at that. Then obviously increasing our productivity and performance. There's a lot of things that we can do where we can actually look at process improvements, especially with regards to quickly being able to add things, especially multi-entity applications. And I think this is also quite important, like just give a good employee experience. So actually getting there in the morning, like we've got our users using things like Airbnb and Facebook and all of these like enterprises that like put like a huge amount of effort into the UX and the experience and the flows. And I think our employees are starting to want that experience internally as well. They can see it, especially now with the Power Platform, they're starting to build it themselves. So I think actually this whole low-code revolution is like kind of proof of the fact that the users aren't happy with the current state of how apps work. Cool. Again, saving costs by simplifying workflows. There's actually on the Microsoft Learn site, there's a great new introduction that was added last month on like app design. And they've got some cost-saving calculations in there. And a lot of the times, if you can cut out just a little bit of waste, it actually ends up in significant cost savings to the enterprise over time. So the example that they had on there was, for instance, an expense managed claim app that had multiple people through a process and accessing the same data from different systems, really. And just calculating saving like at an average employee, I think like at $35 a month or something, if you save like 50% of the productivity on the time they wasted on that system, that over time could result in like hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings across enterprises. So it's very well worth looking at where we can cut that. And I think sometimes as developers, so I'm a pro dev, just to make this clear, we spend a lot of time optimizing our code, which a lot of times run asynchronously. So that 30 millisecond improvement that you make here or there, it's important, but sometimes the bigger cost savings for the enterprise is actually on the processes themselves. And then I think good enterprise app design also encourages employees to explore data and figure things out for themselves, figure out where the block holes are, things. It allows them to, in a safe place, build filters, build data views, and kind of see where their own workloads are at and the workloads of those around them. So why are we not there yet, I think? So first of all, these systems are, usually if we go for full-on UX experiences, they are costly to implement at the moment, especially if you go pro dev. You need to get like React developers or front-end developers in to go craft these experiences. You need to get UX designers in to build these experiences. I think UX is a great investment. There's lots of research that proves like every dollar spent on UX returns like 50 to 100. So there's some pretty good stats around that. Cool. One of our other problems is we often have users work across multiple systems. So some of our data might lie in a silo. So we've got an Oracle database here. We've got some things in an Excel sheet that people work with, because that's still in 2022 where a lot of data lies is in Excel. We've got, for instance, our HR systems, which employees only like incidentally interact with. The HR users are there 90% of the time, and you maybe might need to go there once every 3 months to go and log a new leave request. We've also got users all over places. So we've got people, especially now, working remotely. Working in our offices, they are working in the field, so they need offline access. So each one of those things are specific things that you need to go and design for and think for. And I think with a kind of, without a low-code solution, this is a very, very expensive problem to solve, is actually designing applications that go where the users are at. Then your device access. So when we're really talking about here is mobile phones, tablets, screen sizes, big screen sizes these days. I think especially we've given a lot of attention in the last maybe like 5 years or so to real mobile and tablet friendly experiences. And we've forgotten that a whole bunch of our enterprise users are actually sitting at big monitors for 6-7 hours of a day. And we need to optimize for that space as well. And often if you design with mobile friendly first and say the experiences will just scale up as my screen scales, you end up with a suboptimal solution. So it is well worth thinking about where these users are going to be doing their work. And especially with enterprise type work, users are experts. Our enterprise users are experts. They can handle lots of data on one screen. They want to see lots of data, and they want access to context on that. Cool. And then different user needs. So I think this is pretty much something that I experienced back in my previous job. I was a sales representative, and then finally a sales manager before I got into IT. And as a sales guy, all of these systems at the time, accessing our CRM systems, were really built to aggregate views for the managers. The systems didn't actually provide any value to the employees as a whole, which then ended up being a box ticking exercise. And this is like really one of those problems with adoptions. And so we got to start thinking about designing and aggregating over the data we've got in the enterprise to the right people, serve it up in ways that empower them to do their work, as opposed to designing from the top and saying, cool, this is what you gotta use. Cool. So Now we're going to just kind of start going into Power Apps, and some of this a little bit back to basics. It's what the Power Platform is, but I think it's worth discussing it because we keep on going through all of the latest and greatest features, and we forget about what this platform as a whole can offer us. So right now there are two main approaches to doing that. I'm focusing today on like internal employee experiences. So I've not put in Power Pages, and Power Pages has gotten its own little icon now. So I'm sure we'll hear lots about that coming up. Cool. So the two big approaches we've got right now is model-driven apps, which are obviously apps that we build up from data modeling, and then we're able to put dashboards, views, charts, forms together and put them and package them into apps. And then our Canvas apps, which are basically allow us to do kind of pixel perfect designs. The form factors is mostly mobile and tablet. You can use them on the desktops, but it creates like a little bit of a weird view on the sides. So they're excellent for like kind of custom experiences, especially for like in-field experiences. They've got some great use cases. For instance, I think this kind of Estimator Pro, where people go into somebody's house, takes photos, does on-site estimations, and that then goes back into your systems. So just want to give a quick overview again of Canvas apps. First off, obviously, it's like you don't have any traditional programming language that you use in there. You use PowerFX, which I'm talking about a little bit later. I think PowerFX is like actually one of the greatest innovations that we've had in a while. I'll talk about it a little bit more. Obviously, drag and drop Canvas, and then you just basically wire up the data to the different attributes that are exposed. It works with PowerFX, as I said, to specify your logic and work with your data. And I think here is quite a big thing is that it's got a whole bunch of connectors out of the box. So it's really quick to actually surface up Oracle data next to Dataverse data in the same place. And I think that's important because we spend a whole bunch of money actually traditionally coming from like the D365 space on integrating data back into a system that the data doesn't actually need to belong there. It's just that it makes the users work a little bit easier while they're doing it. So I think being able to surface that data in the context that the worker does without having to build real-time integrations is actually great. So that's one of the most underutilized resources, I think. And then obviously where they run, I think it's quite important as well that you can kind of embed them across a whole bunch of different Microsoft products. So the experience, obviously, this is created from the Power Apps Studio. So we've got a fully blown studio for building these kinds of apps, drag and drop, and adding components and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of components. There's kind of this example that you can build like custom components inside of your app and reuse them inside of your app. You can also go on and build custom code libraries, which I'll talk on a little bit later. Then I think that there's kind of that little bit of power, and I put in that last bit there. It's like filter accounts, annual revenue is larger than 1,000, and I think most people can understand what's going on there. And this is again where PowerFX comes in, where it's got this Excel-like language, but I think the real change is that we're moving away from like imperative code, the way we tell the computer how to do things, to declarative code, and we start telling the computer what we want. And the computer goes and figures out the best way to go and do that. And this is kind of the glue that's the back of that. Cool. One of the other cool things that's recently come up, this is still in preview. I've played around with it a little bit. There's still a little bit of kinks and stuff to figure out. But there's a ability for you to use Figma, which is a UX tool that's used across a wide variety of enterprises, to actually design and work together with your teams. And I think that's one of the big things here is that as opposed to a Canvas app where you can only have one author working on it at a time, Figma allows you to do multi-authoring, so we can actually work together on the same thing. And we can bring all of the data stuff back together again, export this, and it will actually scale up your pages for you in a Canvas app. And I think what's quite cool about that is like once the design's done, you just need to kind of wire up the data and you can go. And like 80 or 90% of the work up front is really the design bits that you need to go and do. these are a couple of screenshots from what you get in Figma itself, which is quite cool because it gives you access to like all of the different kind of like components that you've got available to use that they allow you to use. But what I quite liked about it as well is they've put them into different sections, and I might actually show this on screen later, that show you like the do's and don'ts, and they're like subtly guiding you through creating better experiences. And this is all obviously based on data on mistakes that people often make. So that's quite exciting. I think here is a big one that might trip you up. I had a colleague the other day create a whole app with lots of rounded corners and stuff and figure out that this doesn't work. So there's a section at the top that says, cool, you can only use rectangles with square corners right now. The AI tool does not pick up rounded corners, so do not get caught out with that. And then the other thing is, if you don't put your notes inside of a frame like this, it will get picked up and the AI builder will try and put this into your model-driven app. Once it's actually in that context, you can have your comments and your notes and things in there and work together. Any questions so far? Right, then quickly back to model-driven apps. Model-driven app is obviously focused on like models or data structures, and most of your work's done doing data modeling and then being able to add quickly add views and stuff to it. I think we all know like model-driven apps are great because you can do like really complicated things with it. It's an amazing system. It's been around for a long time. The base framework of how that works. So there's also a lot of resources to help you do this. They're also really good for driving process. So saying, cool, I mean, the out of the box one is like kind of the lead to opportunity process and how to do like kind of multi-entity data editing and things like that. From the user perspective, this is a benefit. I think like all of them kind of work the same. They're all WCAG 2.1, I think, compliant out of the box, which is great. So you get accessibility for screen readers and those things straight up. And once they've actually kind of figured out how one of these work, it's very easy to work on another one. And I think these are all strengths to it. And it's got some additional things as well, which I think is where a lot of us love it. It's obviously got the security models out of the box, able to do that. We're able to extend it, although the extensibility is quite limited at this stage, and we can have a chat about that now. So you can do that. It's usable. So when they talk about usability and accessibility, there's been a lot of research done on how these products get used in enterprise, and they've gotten much better over the years. Over the last 10 years or so, and we've seen like so many iterations of this product. It's gotten very cool. And obviously process driven, and then your business logic. So for instance, and just a note on that, this business logic bit, you'll start to see power effects creep into this section as well. And then like you start to figure out, okay, cool, power effects is actually something that's starting to like glue all of this stuff together. And it's probably worth investing in some power effects courses. Cool. So how do we create these apps? We've got these model-driven app designers. This is the modern designer. There's also a classic designer that you can use. I think for the most part, like 95% of things have been moved over at this point. Like you can get most things done. I do find myself every once in a while going back to the classic for like some specific things. But for the most part, every couple of weeks, I see new features pop up that I can just start using in the modern driven app. Cool. So here again, just this ability to go and create and add views and specify your app and your sitemaps and everything. So all of this is obviously without low code. So these are like drag and drop. You've got the components that's first line connected to data types that they know about. And this creates like a really cool experience on that. So we've like kind of until this year been able to like extend these model driven apps. So they do a whole bunch of these stuffs in the box, but as I said previously, with regards to like entity only views, there's often requirements that pop up that need us to either go outside of the system to get some data, or to have people surface multiple levels of data into the same place. And traditionally, we've kind of like done that with web resources. So people build like little jQuery or React parts. Well, first jQuery and then React, and I think there was a period when Knockout was quite big to kind of surface up these views. The web resources were a little bit funny though, because they're quite hard to actually put where you need them to be put, and like style them and like kind of make it look like it's part of the framework. That's gotten a little bit better because you can use the Fluent UI libraries and stuff there now, but you don't need to anymore because we've got the third one on the list, the Power Apps Control Framework, so I'll talk to you about now. Then you obviously had options for doing some scripting, and that's like basically just things like doing your loads and showing some views up, hiding columns and things like that to try and kind of tailor forms to specific people viewing them at specific times. And then the Power Apps Control Framework, which I think was really great, because this is how Microsoft themselves add new controls onto the framework at this stage. So you get to basically spin up a pro dev experience. It's got a TypeScript app that starts up, and you can add any framework you want in there. I think Microsoft likes us to use Fluent as well, uses the out-of-box experiences, so we start using the same design language that they use across a whole bunch of other Microsoft products, which creates like kind of really cool integrated experiences. It's worth noting you can do some really cool stuff by pulling in some third-party libraries like 3JS and D3 and stuff for like really advanced visualizations and stuff. Naturally, you've got the options to do that visualizations and bring Power BI and stuff in, but there's always like licensing considerations with that. So sometimes it's better to just like get the data from the source and put it in something like D3. Sorry, I'm just going to see how I'm running on time. All right. Okay, cool. So what's kind of the big differences between like Canvas apps and these model-driven apps? And sorry, this is going to be a little bit boring, but we can go through that. The sources was taken straight from the Microsoft site. So I think up until now, this was kind of all of it was the truth, and some of this now started changing. So we've got the data platform that used to be Dataverse only, and then Dataverse plus others on the Canvas apps. But I think now with model app convergence, where we can start bringing the Canvas apps into the model-driven apps, we've got this opportunity now to actually also say, look, we can bring data from outside systems to interact with into our model-driven apps as well. That being said, that would only be through the custom pages components. Cool. Then the design experience of that. Model-driven apps mostly no code, and then when you did need code, you needed coders, like you'd need somebody that was trained and understood JavaScript or React frameworks and stuff like that. Where the Canvas app has got this power effects, and I think a lot of people feel quite comfortable with it. And I've seen people build some, like non-coders, build some really complicated stuff with power effects because it's understandable. It makes sense. You're really just telling the computer what you wanted to get back to you. There we go again, model-driven app. It was limited, as I said, and we've got full control on a Canvas app for UI control. The consistency you see was like incredibly high on model-driven apps. Like one app looks exactly like another, especially if you work in the field like I often go. So talking to my university lecturer the other day, and I saw on his background like a model-driven app pop up and you're like, well, there you go. They all look pretty much exactly the same, so you know what to expect. The Canvas apps, though, has gotten everything from, well, MS Paint style Canvas apps all the way through to like really elegant and complex applications. So you really don't actually quite know what you're going to kind of get into there. So migration, quite easy with model-driven apps. The experience has actually gotten, this is also something with ALM that we've gotten much better at over time with Azure DevOps stuff, packaging things and moving them across our environments. And I think Canvas apps has got a little bit of that same problem, which you probably have with Power Automate, and Lynn can probably tell you more, is that you've got to have these connections in each environment. And there are ALM tools to start doing this, but I think the story still needs a little bit to go to get like full maturity in order of get ALM all the way through that. Then the speed of creation, like I think rapid is fair on the model-driven apps, and the Canvas apps could be anything from really fast to much longer. I think you could possibly build a Canvas app much faster than a model-driven app if you've already got an Excel spreadsheet and you just click a button and build it. So depends where that is. Then model-driven apps, obviously we've got the responsiveness in there. So this is true that it's automatically responsive, but and I think here's the caveat. It's like you also need to design your forms in that way, in a way that it actually properly collapses down. You can actually go into the controls and say, show this control on mobile, show this control on tablet. And I think oftentimes it's quite underutilized. So it is automatically responsive, but you need to go and test it and optimize it for that mobile experiences where you need it. Then the Canvas apps, you need to do quite a bit of work to make Canvas apps responsive. People have built like first-party components and stuff that you can use to do that. It looks like you've had that. Yes. So a lot of this relies on code and us trying to kind of style stuff relative to other things on the pages and trying to figure that out. You would be happy to know that they've kind of solved that on the model-driven side. So then navigating through relationships, and it's automatic. Once the relationships are there in model-driven apps, it's there. You can just kind of guide through and walk through. This has also been a little bit of an issue, I think, in my mind sometimes, is that sometimes on a form record, you'll get a drop down with related records on the side, and it's like 50 entities long. And it's not necessarily what that person at that time needs. But that's just one of those things. And then, again, like you can navigate through with PowerFX formulas. Then the accessibility features, as I said, model-driven apps got WCAG 2.1, I think. And then Canvas apps, you can do that, but you need to actually spend time doing accessibility items. So it's well worth running your Canvas apps through a tool like Lighthouse to see if you actually meet the accessibility guidelines. It's got a useful checker in the Power Apps Studio tool to kind of see all of those things. But I like to do a double check and run Lighthouse as well. Cool. And I think here's like kind of the cool thing here is app convergence. So this is where we start saying, okay, cool. Let's bring some of that goodness of Canvas apps into model-driven apps for specific things, not all things. So we have previously been able to do embedded Power Apps inside of model-driven apps. This is not new. What is new here is that the custom pages it's part of the framework. It runs in the context of a model-driven app. There's it takes on the same license as the model-driven app. And so you've got access to which records are clicked and which record it's running on. You just pass a parameter to it and it's there and you can run it, which gives you kind of this opportunity to like pass in, an account or for that matter, to just pick up who the user is and give him a view of his kind of work. And this is kind of an example that we were working on. I had a colleague of mine, Patrick Lip, help me with this. So basically just this ability, and this is something that you don't currently have with like model-driven apps, and I'll go into this a little bit in the demo, but like this ability to like quickly click on like side views of things and open up windows, and it's multi-entity. So you're saying, cool, as I'm an account manager, for instance, I can go and I want to look at the deals, the opportunities, all my open tasks, or I want to send this person an email. And this kind of gives you the opportunity to have a account view. So this is a gallery control list that you can scroll through and be able to like quickly execute actions on an account from inside of that experience. You could also do some of that, and I'll show you the next page, is that you can have these custom pages in different kind of configurations. So you can have it as a completely full page in your app. You can have this as like a custom side panel, or like a dialogue that pops up if you need specific things. And this can all be controlled and triggered from things like your command bar items. So I think I've actually spoken about most of these. There you go. Separate solution elements. I think this is also quite important. As opposed to like kind of big canvas apps, we can have multiple users work on different parts of the app. So let's say we've got 3 pages in the app. Everyone can work on a different page at the same time, which is quite, well, different pages at the same time. To be fair, you can't co-author canvas apps yet. Obviously the model context that we just spoke of. And then also Microsoft's official recommendation at this stage is to use custom pages instead of embedded apps for like this better performance and better integration. And they're quite snappy, actually. They're really fast. They run and perform very, very, very well. Cool. Okay. So here is where the opportunities start lying. First off, as I said earlier, you've got these data silos, you've got all of these things. The custom apps, now we've got this ability to go, this is a model-driven app created for the work that you want to do, but let's bring the data to you as well, like the data that you need to do your job instead of integrations. And I think there's lots of cool opportunities for this, because you can even do stuff like, instead of setting up a full integration, is you can like kind of drip feed data that you do need into your organization into the system. So let's say I've got a little SQL database that's legacy, and as my users interact with it, they can click a button and pushes it into that record as they need it, and without any manual intervention. So you know, there's lots of options that start presenting themselves for doing stuff like this. Also, because you can start doing that, you can probably start creating an engagement layer in your organization on top of lots of other business systems, and have people in like role-driven apps be able to do very specific things across different business systems in a singular place. Then your custom pages are added to the sitemap, so they're there. You can actually navigate through them. You can navigate to other model-driven pages. So it's fully integrated into this framework. They've got a responsive container control for you. I know you had an issue with that. So basically, what it is, if you put it in a container, it would actually stretch with the pages, and then you just need to put your components in that container, and it will automatically do that for you. And you can like obviously compose the containers as well. And then I think here's the most important part, like the custom page is considered part of the model-driven app infrastructure, and it can only be used in the model-driven app. And then it also means we don't have to like specifically share it with groups of people. If you've got access to a model-driven app, you are automatically considered as a user of that. Cool. So some of the things that's been coming up that can help you create experiences on that. So on the left-hand side, you can see that, and I quite like this, is the team eating their own dog food and giving us a model-driven canvas app, model-driven experience with a custom page to actually kind of show us all of the stuff that they've got involved in the creator app. So what the creator kit is it actually gives you a whole bunch of out-of-the-box controls based on the Fluent framework that you can just now kind of pull in. And this is going to make it much easier, because if you've ever tried to make a Canvas app look like Dataverse models, it's very hard. to get that consistently right. So basically what they've done now is there's a whole set of components that you can start with and start editing. For instance, these cool things like command bars and breadcrumbs and like kind of this full experience that you get across the whole suite of other products. And they're just available for you. You just need to connect them up with data. And you install these kits inside of your environment. And there's two parts to that. So first off is code components, and then so they've built a whole bunch of these stuff as code components on PCF control framework, and then some of them are custom components that's just straight up canvas apps with power effects. There's also a cool thing that you get with that is like kind of for the creator kit, it's got this a little Fluent UI theme editor. So once you start using Fluent UI across all of your applications, you just need to go and create your theme with your colors and stuff. You can download that. And then you basically just get this little set there and you put it on start of your app and it will apply your styles. Cool. And then the Power Apps component framework design framework. So this is when you want to go and extend it yourself. So this is basically the experience as PCF controls. My nose quite like my PCF controls. So this is now in the latest version. React is now in version, the React library for Fluent is now in its version 9. So this only happened this month. It's got a whole range of exciting components. They're quite easy to wire up. You've got this React experience where you can build composable like functional style applications. Cool. And then I think this is something that's quite important. And I didn't quite realize the importance until I looked at there's an MVP Scott Darrow that does a whole bunch of stuff on like kind of UIs and canvas apps and stuff, and I quite like to follow him. So if you do want to see what cool things are happening out there on like kind of the user experience side, Scott Darrow is a really cool guy to follow. So Power Effects itself is like kind of this glue that's taken it together, and this is actually taken from the Power Effects site. So they're talking about general purpose. So that means like it's a full-blown programming language. It's strongly typed, meaning like you have specific keywords and stuff. Which you don't have just random variables and stuff lying around. It's based on actual data structures and models. But it's also declarative and functional. And I think here's the important part: is this paradigm shift between, and I've said it a couple of times now, between specifying to the code exactly what you need to do, which is error prone, and that's where a lot of our mistakes and stuff get made, because it's error prone. There's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of edge cases to consider, and I think imperative style coding is really the thing that like takes a long time because there's just so many edge cases and stuff to go into. Where with something that's like a declarative style programming language that is also always live, as in this block, I can be busy authoring something, put code in there, and it immediately gives me a feedback experience. If I'm working with a data list, it immediately brings back that data list, so I can actually see what data is going to be populated in this list. So it also creates this like really fast iteration cycle from like kind of a dev point of view. And then it's quite interesting on the site would say they say like low code, no code, pro code. And this is quite true. So you get this very low code kind of experience where you can like kind of do stuff like filter all accounts that are larger than 1,000, which is kind of easy, and that's kind of the base type of stuff. And then no code, where it says like you still use this, but it's really no code. So I can go app.background color and set it to red, which is easy. Like you don't need any coding experience to figure out how to do that. And then pro code. So all of these things can go back into GitHub. There's YAML files at the back, and you can actually edit those YAML files, push back up, and you get this pro dev experience that's all running inside of Visual Studio Code. So just to then kind of get back to like kind of those challenges that we were talking about in the beginning. So costly to implement. Yes, It is, but it's gotten much cheaper. It's gotten to the point where I think we can incrementally adopt things and put them in and make little, especially with systems that are already running, make little adjustments and little process improvements and stuff without like this exorbitant cost of like maintaining and getting developers in to build like kind of pro code stuff. The multiple systems access. So when we're talking about using like kind of the Power Apps as your engagement layer, like you can actually start bringing your data from your silos together inside of this one kind of unified experience, especially if they're not full-time users of the other systems. This really kind of makes sense. User location. So like with this kind of design, you can put these things like really everywhere, and especially now with a lot of us working in teams, you can have all of these apps surface up in Teams as a part of obviously a part of a channel or just on your personal one as well. And I think it kind of like really solves this. And then I think like which kind of devices people access these things from. All of these applications that we have here like kind of solve this problem. As you get multiple form factors, and you really get the option to kind of decide on these things. So when you do have field service agents and stuff, like you can definitely go and reach for a Canvas app and go and put it out there, and you could go really far without doing any custom code on that. Obviously, you get your security out of the box, especially with model-driven app side. Unfortunately, with the Canvas apps, you also do need to be a little bit more careful when you're designing these experiences. So Microsoft can give you some protections with regards to accessing database records that are only yours and yours that you can see, but it can't really give you protection on, for instance, if you open up a SQL account, like you need to write queries that bring back the right stuff. If you don't write it correctly, people could see data that's not there, and there's no guardrails really for third-party stuff. And then the differing user needs, and I think this is something that we really need to think of, is instead of these like huge monolithic applications that we develop and like kind of push through and like put down, is instead to go to these business units and have applications for the managers. Build a manager-specific application, build a user-specific application, build like level 1, 2, and 3 user applications. They're really fast. Like once you've got your data model set up, it's really easy to experiment and iterate over and say, is this working for you? What can we do here? What can we do better? So I think that's one of the big opportunities that are coming up. And then yeah, so basically just some of the tools that you can use to do that. Obviously, there's many more tools out there, but Visual Studio Code for some of your pro dev experiences, you would have seen in the new Power Pages as well. It's got a really cool little link at the top that opens up a Visual Studio in-browser experience. So like as you're on a page, it actually opens it up and you can quickly edit it, save it, and go back. So very cool. GitHub, obviously, for source controlling and pushing your stuff through, especially as you start building from a enterprise point of view, start building up custom component libraries and stuff that you can use across all of your business units. It's really important to have these things in source control and being able to get pushed onto different environments. So obviously GitHub tied up with ALM processes and things. And I think it's quite important. Like we don't often like really monitor the apps for performance and see where these things go and see like what are the user experiences. I think a lot of the time in enterprise applications, we just kind of puts things down and like say this is what you get, deal with it. And you can do that. You can put these things down. You can say, cool, this is there. And when you start seeing things, for instance, new components get added and all of a sudden page loads jumps to 10 seconds. It might have been fine on a local machine that doesn't have a lot of data and the developers never tested in the full enterprise system. That starts having impact across your environment. So I think as part of any good like DevOps story is the monitoring afterwards and making sure that you do kind of proper sorry, I'm lost for words now, site reliability engineering, so processes to actually measure uptime and things like that. Now, obviously, there are many web frameworks out there, and I'm quite glad that Microsoft's gone down the route of saying, cool, you do React with Fluent UI, and then we can stop having this conversation because there's 50 frameworks out there, and each one has got their own things. React there, Vue's there, Angular's there. This is actually quite good. We'll start to see things, and this is also quite important, I think, over time as you get developers in and out of your organization, that you've got a unified way to do these pro code things. So a developer working at organization A that's been building stuff with React and Fluent can walk into organization 2, and now they'll just be able to run because they know how React and Fluent works, as opposed to using Vue at this enterprise and Angular at this enterprise, which always becomes a massive issue. Also, lots of React developers out there that we can reskill into Power Platform developers, I hope. Cool. Figma is a UX tool. Fantastic tool. They've got a couple of like Jamboards and things like that in there as well. It's quite cool for like getting your ideas down on paper, and then even if you don't use this to like kind of design the experiences and automate like kind of the app creation, it's a really good place to like think about your things before you start clicking buttons and modeling your data and stuff together. And because it's got all the components that the Dataverse uses out of the box, you can actually now build up model-driven app forms and stuff with the components inside of Figma as well, and then probably just share that with your implementers, and they've got something to work on. And the cool thing with Figma as well is like we can give like external user access. So if we're like kind of working with our clients and like possibly third-party consultants to our clients, we can all get together and like kind of jam on an idea. And then Chrome Lighthouse, like a really, really underrated tool, or overrated, I don't know. But just open up your browser web tools, click on the Chrome Lighthouse scores, run it. It will tell you where you've forgotten your ARIA labels, your accessibility labels. It will tell you where you need to improve your page load performance. It will tell you if your image is not too big. It does a whole bunch of stuff, and you can track it over time. So I think it's really cool. And you can use this even if you're not fully in charge of everything. Like, for instance, model-driven apps, Canvas apps, will allow you to put a 5 megabyte photo inside of an app, and you shouldn't. But it will allow you to do that. So I think stuff like Lighthouse will help you to put that up. Yeah, and that kind of gets me to the end of it. And there's only a couple of minutes left, or I think I just ran over.
Yeah, that's all good. Good timing.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I find is a bit of a headache is a good resource to get me into using Figma.
Yeah.
Because I'm not very good at making things pretty. That's not my jam. It works. It just doesn't look good. What are good starters?
So, official recommendations. I think there was what's this? There was one I followed the other day. I'll sync with you afterwards, and I'll show you quickly some of the resources on my YouTube channel. Like I absolutely followed some of them.
But it's a common challenge. I think as developers, it's one of the things that we're not really good at is making things look pretty. And as hard as we try pages, and then we don't come up with a nice result, and then someone with a turtleneck comes in and then makes it look beautiful.
You haven't lived until you've had a UX designer do everything for you and just give that to you for you to implement.
Yeah,
it's a joy.
Yeah, and that will be great. And a lot of it is beyond sort of the Microsoft recommendation and more general guidelines on what it is why it looks like. So it's almost like it's an entire field by itself.
Yeah. Sadly, that's something just presses really cool, complicated stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, we've got any thoughts around the use of patterns so that makers can use a consistent templates and that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, and I think this is where custom component libraries start coming in, and you can build them as an enterprise and like import them into your environments. And that way you can have like I don't know, kind of more like pro devs create those for you and then distribute them to your users to actually pull into the apps. You use that with your Fluent UI, and you can start creating quite unified experiences around that. Obviously, it's a challenge, and it needs to be managed. And you can probably build a Power App to manage that conversation with everybody internally.
Cool. Very much. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.